Hey everyone, Rin here, and thank you for coming. And tonight, we're going to be taking a deeper look at the most anticipated film of 2021. Few movies have conjured the insane amount of fanfare, theory crafting, and overall angst that we've seen as a result of the both formal and informal marketing of this movie. And to their credit, Sony and Marvel seem to have once again captured lightning in a bottle. Coming as the third film in the John Watts-directed Spider-Man trilogy, the make-or-break line has been cast on whether it stands up to the task of capping off an incredibly serviceable and entertaining trilogy, among other things, or falls flat in the face of much expectation. Here are my thoughts, finally, on Spider-Man No Way Home. Welcome back everyone, and what a time to be alive, where I can come to you in a moment like this, raring and ready to discuss what I just witnessed in basically a Spider-Man fever dream in No Way Home. I want to come straight out of the gate and say that this film was by far my most anticipated of 2021, rivaled only by the likes of Dune, which released earlier this year on HBO Max and shares a co-star with our topic film of tonight, that being Zendaya, who portrayed the Fremen Chinese Khans and is our beloved Michelle Jones Watson in the MCU. As I mentioned before, not many movies manage to rile up the overwhelming amount of anticipation generated by the ever multiplying number of fan theories in the way that Marvel films do, and Spider-Man No Way Home took that characteristic to entirely new heights over the past few months as a result of some very key and unique marketing strategies on the part of Sony and Marvel, both intentionally and some not so much so. I honestly don't believe we can attribute all of the hype to the studios themselves, as the fandom did an incredible job of psyching itself out as well. And to make matters worse, in the lead up to the film, it became a recurring event to expect new reported leaks almost daily, most of which ended up being not true. But then there was some that was so reasonably sensible it seemed possible that they might actually be authentic. Well, fast forward several months of nail biting, accompanied by a couple of more days after the critic showings of some near child prodigy genius level spoiler dodging, the time has finally come for us to discuss what it is we have now all hopefully had the chance to witness.
I was wondering if maybe you could make it so that he never did.
Strange.
Don't cast that spell. It's too dangerous.
The entire world is about to forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
So here it is. I loved this film. I absolutely loved this film from the beginning to the end. It's been about 5 days now since it was released, and I have seen it 4 3/4 times. The movie just flat out delivered for me. Because I was one of the lucky people to actually avoid most of the spoiler activity online, I was able to have actual genuine reactions in the theater when some of the crazier things took place. Now, with that being said, I will say that I am of the belief that just knowing someone is in a movie that hasn't been reported as being so wouldn't have spoiled it for me anyway, because I think we all pretty much expected the eventual cameos of Tobey Maguire from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy that spanned from 2002 to 2007, and Andrew Garfield from the Amazing Spider-Man movies of 2012 and 2014. So for me, knowing that aspect didn't really change anything about my viewing experience, as well as having some strong inklings that we would also see Charlie Cox return as Matt Murdock. There was some very wild and rambunctious theories floating about that we could see any and everyone from Deadpool portrayed by Ryan Reynolds to Professor X portrayed by either Patrick Stewart or James McAvoy. None of this happened, of course, but it definitely made for some very exciting anticipation in the lead up to the film. Also, Charlie Cox's cameo couldn't have been executed any better in my opinion. It was completely unnecessary to the plot, as in it wasn't needed whatsoever to make the movie better, but having it definitely took things up a notch. And they didn't lay it on thick and try to quick explain what was going on with it. It was just a subtle nod and acknowledgement, basically saying, hey, this person is here in the MCU and we'll see them again, because after all, he's a good lawyer. And after seeing Echo appear in Hawkeye Season 1 along with Kingpin, I have some very, very strong feelings and inclinations that we'll be seeing Charlie Cox again real soon. Getting back to the film, Tom Holland really delivered for me. The acting on his part was outstanding, and he finally got to show a bit more of his range in the MCU. His supporting cast was in no way any less impressive, and Zendaya and Jacob Batalon continue to contribute to the amazing on-screen chemistry amongst this trio we've come to know and love. Marissa Tomei brought all of the charm and exceptionalism that one would expect from someone of her acting prowess, and Aunt May's death was one I can honestly say I wasn't expecting. Having May be Peter's Uncle Ben was a move I didn't see coming, but once it happened, I knew immediately that all couldn't be right with her, as we soon see. The cinematography and high-end special effects allowed for a very smooth and uninterrupted viewing experience, as well did the score. It goes without saying that living in an age where technology allows for filmmakers and actors to portray these larger-than-life heroes and villains straight off of the pages of a comic with these insane powers and abilities in a believable and entertaining manner for audiences is quite the treat, and one that I don't take lightly, and you shouldn't either. I was completely immersed in this film from beginning to end, so much so that the 2-hour and 28-minute runtime didn't bother me one bit. The movie of course had its fair share of surprises, Easter eggs, homages, and call-outs to other works, but none quite trumped the eventual appearances of Maguire and Garfield. I don't know about you all, but when Ned opened the first portal and he and MJ are standing there calling out to Peter, and as the person on the other side gets closer and closer, we begin to be able to make out the costume likeness to the Amazing Spider-Man run, I almost lost it. Many of the people in my theater started crying, and those that didn't were too busy yelling and screaming. I love the levity they chose to carry throughout this scene, as we see Garfield's Peter Parker in complete shock and awe about what's going on, and the banter back and forth between Ned, MJ, Peter, and Ned's grandma was golden. It was obvious, in my opinion, from the moment Andrew stepped through that portal that he showed up to bring the bang, because his acting for the rest of his on-screen time was unbelievable. He made all of us remember who his Peter Parker was and what his Peter Parker went through, which made the moments of reflection and redemption he gets matter that much more. And then when MJ goes, we'll just keep trying until we get the right Peter, I already knew what was coming next. I was halfway convinced we were going to get like 5 Peters all in one scene at this point, but the one we got was more than enough for both adult me and child me, because when Tobey hopped out of this portal, I nearly fainted in my Dolby Cinema seat. Tobey Maguire has been noticeably absent from the big screen for well over 6 years coming into this movie, so it was such a treat seeing him back, and in none other than the role that shot him into superstardom in the early 2000s in the first place. I still believe wholeheartedly that Spider-Man 2 is by far one of the best superhero movies ever created, and that wouldn't have been possible without the incredible and relatable acting of Tobey Maguire. So when all of this happened right in front of us and we get the showdown between the two of them, I couldn't help myself from completely geeking out. I must commend how director John Watts managed to balance the emotions throughout this movie. It was masterfully done. The way the humor is woven throughout everything that makes the film enjoyable, while also allowing for the exploration of much deeper, sometimes darker and sadder experiences, was incredible. I'll say again, Tom Holland really displayed his range in this movie, and this is by far the best of the MCU Spider-Man movies to date. The plot, which allowed for all of this incredible activity to take place, was decent enough in its composition, but I will say that there were some problems here and there for me with the logic and maybe the accurateness of it all. For Peter Parker to risk destroying the entire multiverse and more to have everyone forget he's Spider-Man except for the select few he wanted to know, all for the opportunity to go to MIT, seems like a huge stretch, and one that I would hope would be given much more thought. Granted, he is still in high school, so I guess that could be used to validate the process of events and thinking, but even Doctor Strange can be taken at fault for allowing all of this to even happen in the first place. While we didn't get Deadpool or Blade or the X-Men, we did see a heck of a lot of people and beings at the end of the movie when the voids to the multiverse were beginning to tear. I will say this, it didn't make a lot of sense to me that Jamie Foxx's Electro would even be here, because he never knew Peter Parker's identity to begin with. And in case you missed it, Kevin Feige did it again with a neat homage to DC Comics, as we see Flash Thompson promoting his book Flashpoint. which is obviously a reference to one of DC's most popular incidents, the Flashpoint paradox, which sees the Flash, Barry Allen, among many other things, waking up to find out he's in a different timeline with no powers. The similarities between No Way Home and Flashpoint aren't glaring, but there is the aspect that both Peter Parker and Barry Allen are trying to change their fates within their respective timelines with some very out of the ordinary and maybe not so recommended tactics. Last but not least, the villains in this movie really outdid themselves. Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, and Electro return with a bang, and Sandman and Lizard were also great additions to fill out the rest of the film's roster. Jamie Foxx is an Academy Award winning actor, among so many other things, and he always lights up the screen for me with his talent, poise, and humor. William Dafoe was as maniacal as ever as Norman Osborn, and for me, took the cake on being the film's standout villainous force. I believed every second of his performance, and the way the Spidey Sense scene in Happy's condo was shot and pulled off wouldn't have been as epic without an actor like Dafoe to assist Tom Holland in his magic. Alfred Molina seriously seemed like he walked right off of the set of Spider-Man 2 into this movie. He really did flawlessly resume his place and footing in the role, and had some of the more memorable moments in the film in my opinion. When he and Tobey Maguire meet again at the end of the movie and basically recite back their lines from almost 20 years ago to one another, it was so endearing and left me with a sense of completeness. Much in the same way that Garfield's Peter diving to save MJ did when Tom Holland's Peter Parker was snatched away from his attempt by Goblin. I absolutely loved the moment where MJ asked him if he's okay, after she just fell almost 100 feet to her near death, because for me it felt like them asking the fandom the question, and the answer was no. I was not okay. I was bawling my eyes out. The redemption in this moment alone was enough for me to want to see more of Garfield's Peter. I also have to make mention of the slick reference Jamie Foxx's Electro made to Andrew Garfield's Peter about a black Spider-Man, which was clearly a nod to the existence of and popularity of Miles Morales, who we know exists within the MCU as Donald Glover's nephew and is the main character in the very successful animated film series Into the Spider-Verse. The ending for me was tough. I completely get the direction that both Marvel and Sony have chosen to go, but it doesn't make the sting any better. This was the best way to leave things for now, as we don't know what the future of the Marvel and Sony's arrangement are gonna be, and it takes Tom Holland's Peter Parker completely off the board for the foreseeable future in the MCU. It also makes it such that no one will remember him at all, so no one will be looking for him or making note of his absence. Logically, I get why Peter will have to choose to just have everyone forget him, but we're left not really knowing the reach of Strange's spell and why it was literally the only thing that could be done. And at the end, why couldn't Peter just stand there with MJ and Ned until after the spell was cast and tell them the truth again? Once the choice was made, it was obvious what decision Peter would eventually make in the coffee shop, and I hope that we do see Ned and MJ again if the rumors of another trilogy are in fact true. I also have a sneaking suspicion that we may see Ned and MJ in the Disney Plus Ironheart series, as Riri Williams does in fact attend MIT. Seeing Peter now on his own was obviously very hard for fans, with Happy not even knowing who he was anymore. But this will all be for the better in the build-up of his character into his own standalone Spider-Man going forward, possibly in the Sony Spider-Man universe in a way we haven't seen him before. The post-credit scenes were okay. I didn't like that the end credit scene was just a trailer for Doctor Strange 2, but that could be because I had already seen it, as it leaked a few days before the movie dropped. The Venom mid-credit scene was good, but it does suck that that's all Tom Hardy was used for here. It's more of a teaser of what's to come, which is of course exciting, but doesn't do much in the here and now. Now, there are rumblings of a new groundswell amongst the fandom that wants to see a final film in the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man series. This is simply a delight to hear, as for years following those movies, it seemed like much of the fandom ragged on them quite a bit. But it seems that now most everyone has come to a new consensus that Andrew Garfield performed quite well in them, but just didn't have the best directing and writing team behind him. Nevertheless, in the light of his amazing performance in No Way Home, it would seem the fires have been lit once again and the winds are blowing in his favor. And I for one can say I would love to see a third film to close out his trilogy, given the right people are attached, giving him the opportunity to bring it home for good. So here's my formal letter of support for an amazing Spider-Man 3. In closing, this film was amazing. It is easily my favorite Spider-Man movie of all time, coming in slightly past Sam Raimi's and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2, followed by 2018's Into the Spider-Verse. For me, this movie lived up to all the expectations it carried into its opening day, and it goes without saying that Tom Holland can now truly place his name up there with the other Spider-Man greats. The suit we get a glimpse of at the end of the movie may just be the most comic accurate Spider-Man suit we've ever seen in live action, and it makes one wonder just how long we'll have to wait to see it again. I will of course be continuing to cover all live action Marvel and Star Wars Disney Plus content and films from all walks of life that I have the pleasure of watching. And if you feel so inclined, I would love to have you back here week in and week out to continue to cover it all with us. Again, guys, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and click that bell for notifications if you've enjoyed our content here tonight. Jump down in the comments and let me know your thoughts. And while you're at it, be sure to check out some of the other content here on the channel. All of the necessary links are listed here below for you to keep up with the coming content and shareables. Please be sure to follow me on all social media platforms. Or just the one you use most frequently. We are slowly but surely building a community here, and I would personally love for you to be a part of that. And last but not least, we have a merch store. So whether you see something you like or just simply want to support the channel, head on over to our shop and grab something, or grab everything. But again, thank you so much, guys and gals, for visiting here with us today. I really appreciate each and every viewing minute of your time you've given us. There's loads of content we'll be sending your way, so I'll be seeing you. But for now, be blessed. And it was written.
Looking out across the nighttime, the city sleep inside. Yeah, hear her voice shake my window, sweet seduce inside. Yeah, send me out into the nighttime, for walls won't hold me tonight.